Hello and welcome to the RadView Training Institute. Today's class we're going to talk about using the Parameterization Manager. When you finish recording your script and you get that recording in place, you need to keep in mind that you've captured specific values that you entered when you recorded the script. And very often, more often than not, a number of those values need to change with each run of the script. You don't want the second run of the script to actually enter the same value again. So we give you the ability to do that with our Parameterization Manager. And what the Parameterization Manager does is it allows you to substitute input information into the script that will provide for different values being used during the load session. Some of the typical static or recorded values that clients prefer to parameterize are things like the login user ID and password, user selection options. So if during the recording the user you were logged in as selected certain things from the screen to go to the next screen, you may want to change some of those things and parameterize those so that they change during the script. This helps avoid caching. So that you don't get trapped in caching the same values over and over again, and as a result you don't really get true timings in terms of what your users are seeing. Okay, and the source of your parameters, they can come from several different places. The first one is our date and time stamp. So if you need to change a date and time stamp inside the application, you can do that. We can set that up so that they're parameterized. You get a different date for each time you run it. We use files. So if you have a file with data in it that you want to use inside of your script, a lot of times this is where the user IDs and passwords come from, and our example today will show you that. We use a CSV file. This is done in CSV format, and so if you have a very large file, you can export that from your database into a CSV format, into Excel, and then save it as a CSV format, that type of thing. We can substitute random numbers within a given range of numbers if that's what you need to use, and then we can also substitute a random string of characters. Okay, so when you're using these parameterized values, you need to tell WebLOAD how to use those values. Do you want to use those values in a specific order or in a random selection basis? So in other words, just grab me a value, or do you want to use them in sequence? And I had a client once that was issuing new buses. And so we had a file with vehicle ID numbers stored, and we had to use those in VIN numbers so that they came out in sequence. That type of consideration. Can two virtual clients use the same value at the same time? You can control that if that's not permissible inside your system for two users to be logged on at the same time or to use the same value at the same time. You can control that in that way. And also, can each value be used more than once, or do you simply want to use each value once and then end the script? Those are options that you have. As you go through the screens, and we'll show you each of these in my demo here in just a moment. We'll go through a little training on how to set these up. You'll see these same options presented in each case for each type of parameter that you're putting in. It'll ask you to select the access method. Use values from the file. That is a random basis. It says simply just go get me a value and use it. The second one here is use values, but do not use the same value at the same time. Okay. Now, one of the things I'm going to mention right here is the way we allow that to happen, the way we control that is we cache all of the values into a cache. We put them all into a cache so that we can control who gets what values inside the script, and that brings up some considerations we're going to talk about here in a minute, since we do cache all those values into one place. Option for using all the values once and then end the script. So if you only want to use each value once and end the script, that works as well. We have custom. One of the options you'll have is to select a custom setup, and that custom allows you to make combinations of these values. Okay, so That's something to keep in mind. The second option down here is the selection access method. When I go to get a value, when do you want WebLOAD to grab a new value from the cache or from the file or wherever it gets it from? Do you want it to update the value on each round? And a round means start of the script to end of the script. Okay, so we want to keep that in mind. Do you want to update the value on each round of the script? Do you want to update the value on each use of the script? So every time inside the script it prompts for, it calls for a new value for that parameter. Do you want to get a different value, or do you want to use the same one throughout the script? This will allow you to get a different value each time it's used. Okay, and then we have an update value per virtual client, which says, okay, once a virtual client selects a value from this table, he uses that value the entire time. They never go back and fetch a new value. Okay, so the virtual client, even if it comes around and starts a second round, that virtual client will keep the same value it had originally. So those are the options there. So these are things that you need to define to WebLOAD so it knows exactly how to use that data inside of your script. Okay. And there's a couple things I want to point out that you need to take note of when you're working with the parameterization. The values that you provide are put in a file and they're cached. The values that you provide in a file are cached and they are used by all the load generators during the load session. So this brings up some considerations when you take that into account. If you determine, for instance, that if the values in the table can only be used once for each time and you can't duplicate, then you need to make sure that you have adequate values in there to accommodate the number of virtual clients. If you have 500 virtual clients and you only give us a table with 100 values in there and you say use each value once, then we're only going to run the script 100 times. We're going to create 100 rounds and we're going to end the script. You won't get to your 500 virtual clients. Okay, so in that case, if you had 500 virtual clients and you wanted they can only use the value once, then we recommend best practice would be to give us 600 or 700 values so that we don't have any conflicts and so that nobody runs out of those values when they're trying to run the script. And another best practice is when you are creating parameter files inside of your scripts, make the names unique to your script. And that may be a little bit inconvenient to have to create the file twice, make a copy of it and name it something different. And that way there's no conflicts between scripts if you're running a mix in your template. And then if you get inside that mix, you don't have two scripts trying to tackle the same file and perhaps running out of data or having a conflict. So it works best if you have a separate file for each of those. And that pretty much covers the details I wanted to talk about. So let's begin with the actual applying these values. So let's take a look here at a script that I've got. There we go, and we'll come into one. I've got a script open here that I recorded earlier. This is a CRM script for a little CRM system. And I created a new lead inside this script, and I created an opportunity. So there's a couple places here, well, one for each of the types. I'm going to walk through one setup for each of the types. Down here in my opportunity, I have a date field right here that you can see. And it's the date closed or an estimated close date. In other words, when you working with this customer, you want to get this customer closed by this date. So I keyed in a date originally of 10/31, but I want to change that. I actually want to just run today's date when I run the script. I want to create them all to try to close today. So it doesn't matter what day you're running this on. It's a valid date. Okay, and in order to do that, then we're going to start up here with our parameterization manager. This is the actual place where where you make all this happen, and inside of our parameterization manager. And right now I have no parameters set up, so I'm going to click an add to create a new one, and I'm going to call this close date. And I'm going to select the type. Those are the four types we talked about in the PowerPoint. I'm going to select date and time, okay? And underneath of date and time, we can set up, we've got some predefined formats that WebLOAD already handles and takes care of. and you can actually come in and define your own custom format if you want. You can also set up offsets parameters so that you can offset these dates by a given time or number of days and so forth. And you can control the offset for those. Down here at the bottom, you see those three options we talked about, and you're going to see these in all of the parameters. Update value on each round, start to end of script, update value on each use inside the script, or does a virtual client grab a value and keep it throughout all of its rounds of the scripts as many times as that virtual client is used in the scripts. Okay, and I'm going to select month, day, year. And I'm going to select the capital Y here because this one happens to provide for the 2016 full date, which is how my original date was entered into the system. So this one matches that. And it's going to do today's date, which is fine. I want to substitute today's date. So if I click OK, I have now created that parameter. Now I've got to use that in the script. I've got to tell it where to use that in the script. And I do that by coming down here to my date field. And if I do a right mouse click in front of the double quote and go to insert variable, I have a whole list of variables here that I can use within my script. And these, starting with VC unique ID all the way up, these are always available to you. So we probably could come up with a date field here, a local date, and substitute a local date. That's another way to do it. We chose to do it through the Parameterization Manager. And down here at the last value down here is my close date that I set up. So it's going to go out and fetch that date, and it's going to substitute that into the script. Now, it's just as best practice, we generally recommend that you just comment out the original value that was in there. You could blank it out, backspace through it, and get rid of it completely. That works too. But if you comment it, then you remember what it was. If you come back and look at the script 6 months from now or a year from now, you remember what you were doing with that. Okay, so we've now set up a date and time field inside my script to substitute the date. Okay, the next one I want to talk about is file. And up here, when I logged in, this was my login screen at the top, and this next node down here under my sign in is where I actually keyed in my user ID and password. And you can see those here in the script. I've got my value Al here. And then I've also got my high-tech, super secret, top secret password 1234. I want to substitute those with a table of values which contains user ID, password, first name, last name. Okay. In order to do that, I need to come back to my Parameterization Manager. And if I click Add, and I'm going to call this Sales Rep. So I'm going to substitute my sales reps in here for my own ID, and I'm going to select File. So let's talk a little bit about how to use a file as part of the parameter. Okay, a couple options here. First, we can create a data file on the fly. So if you come into here and you just want to create the data file, let's say you just have a handful of items and you know what they are, you can come in to create a data file. You can specify the number of rows that you want to create and the number of columns that you need in your table. And you can then key in the data. Okay, so in my case, if I said I want, so I'm going to put 7 rows here and 4 columns. You'll see why I'm doing that here in just a moment. And I say set. Now I've got my 7 rows, 4 columns. I could key in user ID, password, first name, last name, and I could key the values into the table. When I click OK, it'll come back and prompt me for a name for the table and a location to save it in. Okay, we go to the default location, but you can override that and put it where you want. All right, so if you just have a handful of items, doing this manually at this point works great. If, on the other hand, we were talking earlier, you have 500 virtual users and you need 700 values in your table, this probably is not an efficient way to do it, keying them in. You're probably going to fetch those values from your database, whether it be Oracle, SQL Server, DB2, whatever. You're going to fetch those values from there, put those into a spreadsheet, save it as a CSV, and then you can access here, and I'll show you what that looks like. You would do a browse here, and it would bring up your table that you saved. In this case, mine's actually a text, but it's comma-separated value, so it works. And down here at the bottom now, you see I've dropped in the values from my table, my sales rep, password, first name, last name. Okay. That first row, if you look at it, is not a valid user ID and password to log in with. And so it's not going to work if my script tries to pick up that particular row. So I'm going to use this row, this first row, as a title row. There's an option here with this checkbox to make that the title row. And what that'll do is that'll change these variables here. So instead of saying sales rep column 1, this will say sales rep underscore sales rep. Sales rep underscore password. The first value is the file, the parameter name, and the second then is the actual column heading or the field. And so we'll set that up. I'll click on this option, and you can see it changes those headings, changes the variables that I'm going to use inside my script. And now I've got my 6 user IDs, which is what I wanted. And this is where that 7x4 came from earlier. So I've got my 6 user IDs and my 4 columns ready to go. Back up here, our select access method. Hopefully you recognize this from the PowerPoint. Use the values on a random basis. Ensure that no 2 values are used at the same time. Use them all at once and get out. Or you can customize how you want to apply those values. Okay. And then under update policy, each round, updated on each round, each use, or by virtual client. So again, these are consistent on how we use the variables inside of each type as you set them up. Okay, so I believe I've got everything correct here. Just double check, looks good, and I'm going to click OK. And if I come into my script, if you recall, it's up here at this node where I have my user ID, then all I have to do to apply this is say insert variable, and you see now I've added 4 new fields at the end of that list. Behind the close date, I now have sales rep, password, first name, last name. So I can select the user ID and comment out the original value. And if I do a right mouse click again and go to insert variable, I can do the same with password. Grab the password, and we've got our user ID and login parameterized. So now they will change with each round and grab a different user ID. Now in this case, I don't care if 2 users log in at the same time. If the same user logs in twice, won't bother this application. It's not affected by that. So I can use them just in random fashion. Okay, the next thing that I wanted to look at is, let's see here, if I come down to my actual entry here. Okay, down here under my new lead that I created, okay, I use my favorite detective, as an Agatha Christie fan, so I put in Hercule Poirot, and so in order to, the first time I entered it and recorded it, that worked great. The system says, oh, okay, good, got a new lead. But the second time I try to enter Hercule Poirot into the system, it's going to say, wait, he already exists. You sure you want to do this? And it's going to yell at me. And so in order to avoid that, I am going to parameterize his last name by appending a number at the end of his name. Okay. Now, I'm going to come back up here, Parameterization Manager, and we're going to do an add. And I'm going to call this unique lead. Okay, and I'm going to select number, a random number. And again, I mentioned to you earlier, the random number allows you to specify and request a random number within a given range. So you can put 0 to 1,000,000, whatever you need. I'm going to make it start at 1,000,000 and go to 10 million. Okay, so I'm going to put a 7-digit number behind his name that's going to make him unique. And the reason I did this is, again, if I was testing 500 or 1,000 virtual clients, virtual users through my load test, I want to make sure that we want to reduce the chance of them getting the same number twice. Again, this is a random number, so hopefully it will never hit that same random number within 7 digits in 1,000 rounds. That's fairly unlikely. Okay, so if I come down here, again, we've got our select access method. Now this one changes. We reworded this a little bit here when we specify a number, because we say random or random unique, meaning that no one can have it no 2 people can use the same number at the same time. Okay, use them all in the range and stop. Okay, you can set up local counter or global counter, which applies to each virtual client, so that they have their own pool or they're grabbing from a generic pool for this random number. Okay, and again, we have custom options down here available, and once again, our update policy: each round, start of script to end of script, each use or each virtual client. I've got that in place now. Let's make sure I like everything, and I do. I'm going to click OK. And once again, we'll come back down here to my node where I enter my new lead. And just to make this pretty, I'm going to put a little space there behind his name. And I'm going to put a plus sign and then a right mouse click once again and insert variable. And now you see I've got my close date, my 4 fields from the table, and now I've got a unique lead, which is my random value. So I can assign that new number behind his name, and he will get a number assigned and be in good shape. Okay, the other one that I want to do is also here when I created, again, this is my user selected options, okay, the data they're keying in. Under title, I assign him as a detective, okay, and I could use detective again, but for the sake of this exercise, I want to show you how we use a character string. So I'm going to insert a random character string into this particular field for detective. Again, come back to my parameterization manager, and if I want to say add for a new one, and click and enter title, and I'm going to select the random string, and we can specify a minimum length or a maximum length for that random string. So if I said I want to go anywhere from 10 characters to, let's say 12, just for grins, okay? So it'll select a random string of characters, 10, 11, or 12 characters in length, and it will assign that with each round, start of script to end of script, the value on each use or the value per virtual client, okay? So I'm now going to have a random string there. If I click OK, and we'll come back to that node one more time, and I will do a right mouse click, insert variable, and come down and get my title. Okay, so now I've got my full list of parameters available in my displayed for me, and I can again comment out the original value so I recall what it was when I set it up. Okay, so now what I've got is everything parameterized in here. One of the things that you want to do when you're working with your script is you probably want to watch those values, so we use info messages in order to do that. So for instance, up here where I changed my login, okay, I've substituted a value here for different logins. I can come in with a message after my sign in. Let's put it after this sleep right here. Okay, and I can say sales rep is, and probably put double quotes in the front. It'll work better. And if I do that and I click on this little icon out here, it'll bring up my list again. So I'm going to select the sales rep first name this time so I can get his name or her name for my sales reps. And it will display that in my logging at the bottom of the screen. I'll show you what that looks like. And we could set one of these up for each of those values that we added through parameterization, so you know which one was chosen at any point in time. Sometimes that's helpful, sometimes it's not necessary. I find it helpful in this particular script to have the sales rep listed for me, so I like to do that. I'm going to do a quick save on this. And let's see, this was, I'm going to save, and then let's call this, I don't think I've run correlation on this script. Let's take a look, because I think I need to run some correlation. Let's just check it here. I know for sure this value down here needs to be correlated. I have run correlation, so we're in good shape. I couldn't remember if I had run correlation on this script or not. So we're correlated. We've now got our parameterization set up, and I've saved it. So I'm going to do a run on this script and just see what results we get and see if it'll actually run all the way through before I send it over to the console for the actual load test. So it's going to come through and check. There's my, you see there, my username and password. So when that finishes and it actually logs into my system, it should come back and tell me who the sales rep was that logged on. Excuse me. And this app isn't real fast, so it just takes a second or two. Parameterization is really very simple. WebLOAD, RadView and WebLOAD have gone out of their way to make this simple for you, to add these parameters to your script and make them useful. My sales rep in this particular case is Max, so he's good to go. And so now we're going to create my new lead, Hercule Poirot, and then we're going to create that opportunity, and we're going to assign a new close date to it. Okay, so there went my new information for my new lead. And Hercule Poirot is being created with a number behind his name. And then we'll create this new opportunity behind here that has the date field. And there we go. Bringing up the opportunity screen. And we're about to start inserting a new opportunity here. There we go. There's our date field, our close date right there. So we're about to enter that new opportunity with the new close date. We extracted some correlation. And in this case, I selected something that didn't need to be correlated, so that's okay too. This one did need to be correlated, so there are a couple things here that did need to be correlated, and those automatically log. My test passed. Everything looks good. Let's go back here real quick, and I want to look at under Opportunity. I want to look at my page view. Okay, so there's my new opportunity information. Came back. I don't see my close date. Let's see, maybe it's up here. That one's a little harder to read. I know this one's easy to read. Let's go back up here to my new lead, which should have gone in as, well, let's see. Hang on one second. Let's do this. Do this side by side is the way I should be doing this. So I got Hercule Poirot, and there's the number that I appended behind him. Let's go back down, look at that sales opportunity again this way. There we go. And my new expected close date changed to 8/8/2016. So I now have that being substituted, and everything's working exactly as I wanted it to do. So that's how we parameterize values inside of WebLOAD, and good luck. Let us know if we can be of any assistance to you as you set these up and make them work for you. Everybody, have a great day. Thanks for listening in.